So the record's gone, forget about that. The Cabinet tonight has two substantive items, but first of all, let's go through the agenda. And first is the confirm the minutes of the previous meeting. Any problems? No. Agreed. No. Thank you. Those are approved. Apologies for absence. I think all the Cabinet are here, and that's the only apologies we need, I think. Or do we need to do key officers? Do we need to do Sarah?
Chief Executive sends her apologies tonight, yes, so it's Aidan and I representing us tonight.
Thank you. Declarations of interest, are there any?
No.
No, none of those. Good. Public participation, there is none tonight. Referrals to Cabinet, there were no referrals to Cabinet. We've got the Cabinet forward plan on page 6. Are there any additions to the Cabinet forward plan? No, there are none. So now we come to the Bovingdon Neighbourhood plan. Councillor Wilkie, would you like to introduce the plan? Very briefly.
Sorry, no, I'm happy for James. Did you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Councillor Wilkie. Thank you, Leader. No, very simply, members, this report is somewhat of a formality. The report gives you background to what a neighbourhood plan is and what's been happening in Bovingdon. In case members aren't aware, I can report that the referendum held last Thursday was successful in that it gave a positive outcome. I've circulated the resulted poll to Layla, who will circulate that amongst Cabinet members. Just to give you the headline figures, everyone, there was a 20.43% turnout. The yes votes, and that's there is a question on the ballot, and it's basically about saying for Dacorum Borough Council to take the neighbourhood plan into account when it makes planning decisions within the neighbourhood plan area, which I think is the ward of parish of Bovingdon defined area. So the yes vote was 669, which I think comes to around about 90.6%. And only 68 against. One support paper, I believe, as well. So the recommendation, where this goes now, members, is that it's a resolution to recommend to full council that the full council formally adopts or makes the Bovingdon Neighbourhood Hand as a statutory planning document. That means that when we determine planning applications, we have to take it into account as a local planning authority.
Yeah, well, I can report we had a little interesting discussion on this about how various neighbourhood plans have come forward in the last few years, and not necessarily all in the places that you might have at first thought. I think we kind of concluded that it does take some local figures to drive it forwards. Obviously, councillors can be involved in that, but they're very useful documents, because it's always good when a community says what they want, and that's helpful. Are there any questions on the report from anyone? No. So the recommendation is on the basis of a successful yes vote, that Cabinet recommends full council formally adopts or makes the Bovingdon Neighbourhood Plan as part of the local plan. Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And moving on to the other item, which is the Performance Improvement Project updated KPI framework. And I see Saj is here, and I presume, Saj, that you're going to introduce the report.
Thank you, Leader. So the report essentially is the culmination of work we've undertaken to update our KPI framework, and the report sets out what all of the new KPI performance measures that we are suggesting for each individual areas. So the recommendation to Cabinet is to accept and adopt these new measures, and to delegate authority to portfolio holders to make minor changes where necessary to keep those measures up to date at all times. We've also set out within the appendix what the specific changes are and also we've modelled what performance looks like against those new measures. And finally, in Appendix C, we've set out a decision matrix where we've recommended changes that are made, where portfolio holders can make those specific changes, or where we need to refer back to OSC to make those changes to KPIs in conjunction with the OSC committee.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's good. I think the public probably expects that we have key performance indicators, so that we can have a sense of what we're trying to do and whether we're achieving it or whether we're getting close to achieving it or not. And I think it's also really good that the portfolio holders have got some locus on that. Obviously, we don't want portfolio holders to be able to manage KPIs in such a way that they're always fantastic, because that wouldn't help anyone. But sometimes KPIs become less relevant over time, or could be more relevant, and so it's good to have a system whereby we can keep on track with that. Are there any questions, any comments on that at this point?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank
I
you.
think, I was, we were working through the KPIs in my portfolio, but and I think they're really useful as consistent indicators, so you can compare. So it's a good way of us expressing what we were doing, what the function of the council is, and roughly what sort of performance we expect. And we've also can say roughly how well we were doing from one year to the next. But we've got to be really careful not to get obsessed by that. They are just indicators, and there's usually a backstory behind them and good reasons why they might have gone up and down. Doesn't always reflect on how good a job people are doing. Officers should not get disheartened if they don't meet a particular target, because there's probably good reasons for that, and vice versa. And so what's really useful is things like sort of graphical information and year-on-year information, and hearing the more descriptive information about how well particular operations are performing.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin. So I'm going to move to the recommendations, which are that the Cabinet adopts the updated KPIs and SPIs and targets as part of the Council's new performance management framework. Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Number 2, that we delegate authority to each portfolio holder to amend individual KPIs relevant to their area if required. Wholesale or high impact changes will still come back to Cabinet for approval. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. And I think that brings us to the end of